Hey everyone. So I noticed that this month, February, marks my 1-year vanniversary. This is the first full year that I have lived out of the element full time. So I wanted to make a video kind of discussing some of the lessons and the things that I've learned. So I think one of the most important things that I've learned, and the first thing that I want to talk about, is just the concept that it doesn't really matter what other people think of my decision to live in a van full time. When I first started this experience, I was very worried, very timid, very scared to answer the question, so Nate, where do you live? That's a common question. You get that in any conversation when you meet somebody, that kind of thing. And I was always very worried about answering that question. I started to become more confident with it, and I could handle it, but I was still worried. Do I say this to a certain type of person? What type of person do I not tell right away? What person do I say, do I just answer vaguely? And even to this day, I still sometimes struggle with that. But I think I've gotten a lot better with it and a lot more confident with it over the last year. The bottom line is, when you make a decision to move into a van or an RV or a car or a tiny house or whatever it may be, if you make a conscious decision to live minimally, you're going to be judged by everybody else. I mean, it just is the fact of life that this is not a normal lifestyle under any circumstance, that none of those options that I just said are normal lifestyles, and they're going to warrant judgment from everybody else. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be bad judgment. It could be good, it could be positive, it could be negative. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad, but people are going to think differently of you for this lifestyle choice. And I realized that very quickly, and I realized that the best way, at least for me, to deal with that is to just be very proud of the decision that I've made, and just to do everything that I can to be confident in expressing that to other people when they ask the question, where do you live? And this even applies for people that I've known my whole life, my family and my friends. I know that they still judge me, and I accept that. I understand that. I understand that my lifestyle choice is different, that it's confusing, that it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But that being said, being confident in this lifestyle has been something that has been incredibly important to my happiness and to my ability to truly enjoy living in a 35 square foot van. So that leads me to my next point, and that's the idea that van life for me has been a source of confidence and independence. So it's made me more of a confident person and more of an independent person over the last year. And what I mean by that, in terms of confidence, for example, like I said, you will be judged by others for making a decision like this. I learned that very quickly. And becoming more confident in this lifestyle and becoming more confident in my decisions as a person has allowed me to counter that judgment and to prove that I'm very proud of the lifestyle that I've chosen. In terms of independence, I think that there are a couple of examples of that. One is the idea that I've kind of learned how to harness solar power and be able to live off-grid entirely. So being able to, power my refrigerator without having to rely on help from others, without having to pay an electricity bill, without having to pay a water bill, things like that, that kind of has allowed me to be more independent. Also, just the general idea that I'm kind of able to pick up and go wherever I need to go and move my house wherever I need to because I have so few possessions and because I'm able to actually do that. I think that is also just a general definition of independence. If that's not true independence, I don't know what else is. So another thing that I've learned is just to be grateful for the little things in life that I kind of always took for granted. So, for example, having access to a hot shower, being able to spend time with friends, having like a desk to work on at like a coffee shop, like a comfortable desk set up to get things done on and to do work on. And then probably the most important is just having shelter from the elements. When there's a storm outside, when the weather is crazy, when it's raining really hard, when there's a lot of wind, I can hear those things very clearly while I'm inside the element. And there is no other time that I feel more grateful for the shelter that the element and that the van provides for me from these, from the weather outside. And I realize that there are a lot of people that don't even have that shelter. And for me, it's very humbling, and it definitely makes me feel like, that I'm very, very lucky to have what I have with my lifestyle here. Another thing that I want to mention is that I've definitely gained a greater appreciation and understanding of minimalism. The lessons that I've learned from this experience definitely correlate strongly with minimalism and have taught me a lot about it. So just the realization that having less stuff is equal to less stress, more confidence in my life, things that I've already mentioned in this video and in many other videos before, have been hugely beneficial. The lessons that I've learned from becoming more minimalist in this van life are things that are going to stick with me forever. So whether or not I decide to live in a van forever, if I decide to move into a tiny house or an RV or an apartment or whatever it may be, I'm always going to be mindful of the things that I purchase and be mindful of the things that I own and try to be as minimal as I possibly can in every sense of the word. So in terms of what I own, but then also in terms of my expenses and things like that. So another thing that I've learned over the past year is that van life can be lonely. This is something that I find is not really talked about too often, but it's definitely the truth that from time to time when you're on the road alone, traveling from place to place, things can get lonely. You're alone. You're entirely alone in your van and you're just kind of going from point A to point B, and it is what it is. There's no denying that. But for me, I've been able to sort of deal with that by, first off, really appreciating the times that I have with other people. So here in New Orleans, I'm trying to spend as much time with my friends as I can because I know that when I get back on the road, it's going to be a little bit different. And also, when I was, like, for example, in Glacier National Park, I was able to meet people there and make friends there and spend time with people there, and I really appreciated the time that I had with them because the 2 weeks before that, I hadn't really seen much of anybody. It is definitely a reality that van life can be lonely, though, and it's something that, might not be for everybody. I'm relatively introverted, so I don't mind being alone most of the time, but for an extrovert or something like that, it's definitely something to consider. One thing is for sure, van life is not all fun and games. There are a lot of challenges, and there are definitely sacrifices, obviously, that are made as a result of living in a van full-time. So, for example, a lot of you guys probably know, but I dealt with like a MRSA staph infection back when I was in San Diego. That was not easy. When I first started this whole thing, I kind of was like in a honeymoon phase where I believed that everything was fine, that there were never going to be any problems, that it was all perfect. And then when that happened, I realized that there are going to be challenges and there are going to be things that are really, really difficult to deal with. Another example is getting sick in the van. That's really not a fun thing to deal with, but the bottom line is that it happens, and it is what it is. It also, I know I mentioned this before, but it takes a lot longer to do like routine daily chores. So like I go to the grocery store like 7 times a week just because I don't know, for one, because I need somewhere to go to the bathroom. So like I spend time going in there, and that adds a lot of time, though. It takes more time to do things like that. You can't just like go down to the kitchen and cook up dinner, for example. You have to like find a certain place to go to, park the van, set up the kitchen, start cooking, and that applies for when you're making a new meal, or even when you're also preparing like leftovers and just trying to warm up your leftovers. So it kind of just is what it is. In my opinion, it's 100% worth it, though. Van life, this sort of leads me to my last point to kind of sum up the video here. Van life has taught me a greater appreciation for the word freedom. And I mean that in a lot of different ways, but the idea that this lifestyle has sort of allowed me to learn to appreciate minimalism, like I said before, and then sort of reduce my expenses to the point where I have more control over my own time. I don't have to spend as much time working in a position or in a job that I really don't enjoy, which allows me more time to focus on things that I really do enjoy. I've discovered this passion for video editing, which I've discovered obviously through the YouTube channel here, but then I've also been able to focus more on things like playing guitar and surfing and the things that I'm really passionate about. That being said, I do have to spend a lot of time working as well, but I've been able to learn to work in things that I really enjoy, and that's something that I didn't have beforehand, and has really increased my feeling of freedom, the perception that I am free. Obviously, none of us are 100% free. We have to make money. We have to support ourselves in some way in this society, but this lifestyle has made me feel like I have more control over my own time, and to me, there is no denying that time is our most valuable resource. So I think that just about sums it up for some of the things that I've learned over the past year living in the element. Thank you guys for watching. For anybody who's considering making the leap and actually moving into the van life or moving into a more minimalist life in like a tiny house or an RV, I definitely recommend it. Despite some of the challenges that I talked about, it has been an incredible experience, and I plan to keep doing it for as long as I possibly can. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll talk to y'all in the next video.